We're not pretending anymore. There's no one weak here. Just stupid kids who thought they'd never be touched. When Jada and Janelle Rivers transferred to the elite, almost entirely white, private high school, they knew it wouldn't be easy. But they never imagined what awaited them. Right now Janelle, standing beside her sister, tilted her head, observing the crowd as if searching for one last spark of defiance. But no one dared to open their mouths. She spoke, her voice not wavering for a single beat. You used fear to control us. Now you know what it feels like. Doesn't sit well, does it? And that was it. No one clapped. No one spoke. Even the teachers standing nearby just exchanged bewildered glances, silently stepping back, as if the line between right and wrong had long been torn, and now only power was the only thing that would be heard.
When Jada and Janelle Rivers transferred to an elite private high school, where most of the students were white and came from wealthy families, they knew they would face challenges. But they never expected that from the very first steps onto the campus, their lives would be surrounded by discrimination, mockery, and violence. Spencer Hale, a prominent student at the school, and his group of friends quickly singled out the twin sisters as new targets for their bullying. They used cruel words, provocative behavior, and contemptuous stares to publicly humiliate them in front of everyone. Each day, Jada and Janelle had to brace themselves to walk through the hallways, enduring mocking glances, sudden shoulder checks, and snickers behind their backs. But the worst came when they found their lockers vandalized with racist slurs and cruel caricatures. The students around them didn't help. Instead, they stood by laughing, filming the scene, and spreading it like some form of entertainment. Spencer leaned casually against the locker beside them, arms crossed, smirking as he said, "Just added a little decoration, to make you feel more at home." The insults had now become a public performance, witnessed by the entire school. But what Spencer and his friends didn't know was that Jada and Janelle weren't the kind of girls who crumbled easily. They were black belts, trained by their father, a former martial arts coach, who had always taught them that true strength lies not in the fist, but in control. And if one day they were forced to stand up, they would stand stronger than anyone. After that day, the atmosphere at school seemed to grow heavier. Jada and Janelle maintained calm expressions as they walked through the hallways full of judging eyes, as if nothing had happened. But deep inside, something was shifting. Spencer and his crew believed they had won, that they had successfully humiliated the new girls. But they were wrong. So very wrong.
A few days later, on a morning that began like any other, Jada and Janelle stepped into the school courtyard. Waiting for them, right on cue, was Spencer, flanked by his two closest friends, Tyler and Brent. His voice rang out, loud and mocking, echoing across the open space for everyone to hear. "No locker to open today? Or did you finally go back to where you belong?" The crowd began to gather. Laughter rippled through the students like a wave, eager for the next spectacle. Janelle kept walking, her eyes fixed ahead. But Jada stopped. Slowly, she turned around, her gaze cold and sharp like steel. "You think we're just going to keep staying silent?" she asked, not loudly, but her voice cut through the hush like a blade. Spencer smirked. "What are you gonna do? Cry?" But before he could finish the thought, Jada stepped forward, fast, controlled, deliberate. She drove her palms straight into his chest. Not a wild swing, but a strike born of discipline. Spencer stumbled backward, unable to keep his balance. At the same time, Brent reached out to yank Janelle's backpack. She spun around, deflecting his arm with force, pivoted at the hips, and swept his legs cleanly out from under him. He hit the ground face first. Tyler rushed in, but Janelle met him head-on, spun, and locked his arm in a clean hold, freezing him in place. The courtyard fell silent. Students formed a circle around the scene, phones raised, recording what had never been seen before at Rosewood Hills: bullies, taken down by the very girls they thought were weak. No one laughed. No one stepped in to defend Spencer. Even a few nearby teachers quietly backed away, unsure, unwilling to intervene. Jada stood tall, her eyes locked on Spencer, who now lay on the ground, gasping, stripped of his arrogance. "We've had enough," she said calmly. We didn't come here to bow. Janelle stood beside her sister, eyes sweeping over the stunned crowd. Every time you push us down, she said, her voice clear and unshaken, we rise stronger. And this time, we're rising so no one else has to bow either. The confrontation ended not with more noise, but with a heavy silence. No more taunts. No more cruel jokes. Just stunned faces, students and teachers alike, watching what had just unfolded. By the time the assistant principal came rushing out from the main building, the entire courtyard was still, formed into a silent ring around the scene. Spencer and his crew lay groaning on the ground. And in the center stood Jada and Janelle, calm, collected, as if they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Into the office. Now, the assistant principal barked, his eyes blazing with anger, though the confusion behind them was hard to miss. Inside the principal's office, the tension was thick enough to cut. Jada and Janelle sat silently, saying nothing. Across from them, Spencer clutched his chest, eyes burning with fury. His mother, Sandra Mallory, burst into the room like a storm, slamming her hand on the desk. My son was attacked, she screamed. Those two need to be expelled immediately. This is unacceptable violence. Before the principal could respond, the door opened again. Mr. Derek Rivers, Jada and Janelle's father, stepped into the room. He didn't speak much. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp as blades. In his hand was a USB drive and a thick folder. I believe you should see this before making any decisions, he said, his voice deep and warm yet firm. The USB contained footage from the hallway cameras. The folder held printed messages, photos of the vandalized lockers, and even statements from students who had witnessed the bullying but had never dared to speak up. The principal reviewed each clip, every page. With each piece of evidence, his face grew paler. Sandra Mallory kept shouting, but her voice weakened with every second, until she had nothing left to argue with. After a long silence, the principal looked up, his voice lowered. Jada and Janelle will not face disciplinary action. Instead, we will be launching a formal investigation into the bullying incidents that have occurred at this school. And Spencer, you and the others involved will be suspended pending that investigation. No one said a word. Sandra's rage melted into stunned silence. Her husband Greg arrived late, and after hearing everything, simply bowed his head, unable to meet Derek's eyes. As the meeting ended, Derek placed a steady hand on his daughter's shoulders, his gaze filled with pride. From today onward, he said softly, you won't need to keep your heads down. And no one else who looks like us will have to either. News of the confrontation between Jada, Janelle, and Spencer's group spread across Rosewood Hills like wildfire. But this time, the talk wasn't mocking. Students whispered with admiration, or even guilt. The laughter that once echoed at others' expense vanished. Everyone now understood. The silence that had protected the bullies had been shattered. In the days that followed, the school atmosphere changed. Teachers, who once pretended not to see, now called Jada and Janelle by name with newfound respect. Some even apologized. Their words came late, but the shift was real. The smirks, the sideways glances from other students, slowly disappeared, replaced by uncertainty, and then respect. Jada and Janelle didn't become overnight heroes. They didn't need to. All they ever wanted was to be themselves, walking the hallways without feeling like they were walking through a battlefield. And for the first time, that happened. One afternoon, as they sat beneath the old tree in the courtyard, a spot they used to avoid out of fear of judgment, a group of freshmen approached. A small girl, hair in pigtails, nervously holding a notebook, spoke softly. Can I sit with you? I just wanted to say, thank you. Because of you, I feel safer here. Jada smiled. A quiet, warm smile, like sunlight in late autumn. Of course, she said. There's room here for all of us. That moment, small as it was, carried more weight than any fight. It proved that courage can spark change. And sometimes standing up, not to fight back, but to protect yourself, is the most powerful lesson others can learn. As time passed, Rosewood Hills no longer felt like the place that once made Jada and Janelle clench their fists every morning. Now they walked through its gates with confidence, not because someone allowed them to, but because they had earned it. Those who once stayed silent now quietly stood beside them. Not with loud declarations, but with small actions, a nod in the hallway, a whispered, "Sorry I didn't speak up," a supportive hand on the shoulder after class. In classrooms, teachers who once called their names without care now looked them in the eye. And in those eyes, Jada and Janelle saw something they never expected: recognition. Not because they knew martial arts or won a fight, but because they had the courage to rise when no one else would. Even the school board, under public pressure and irrefutable evidence, was forced to act. Spencer's group was suspended indefinitely. An official statement went out to all students, making it clear that violence, discrimination, and bullying would no longer be tolerated at this school. But for Jada and Janelle, the real victory wasn't punishment. It was peace. It was being able to eat lunch without whispers behind their backs. It was being chosen to lead a group project, not out of obligation, but because they were trusted. One afternoon, after class, they paused at the edge of the sports field. The wind rustled the trees, sunlight painting the grass gold. Jada turned to her sister, her voice low. "Do you think we really did it?" Janelle didn't hesitate. She nodded, eyes fixed on the main building where it had all begun. "We didn't just do it," she said. "We changed this place." They smiled, not the smile of people who won a fight, but of those who knew that through strength and kindness, they had rewritten the rules for everyone who would come after. If you're out there fighting injustice quietly, the narrator closes, remember this: you're not alone. And sometimes standing up just once is enough to change the world.